Hi, it's Susan Bruck, and I am speaking to you on a snowy April day. And I've been thinking about one of the questions I used to get asked a lot when I was teaching my parent child classes, especially, was what's the difference between Waldorf education and Montessori education? Um, and So I wanted to share some thoughts about that today with you. I've got my notes to help keep my thoughts organized, hopefully. And before I started, I wanted to give you a little bit of a background. If you've been watching my videos for a while or know me from other places online, you know that I am a Waldorf teacher. I've been a Waldorf early childhood teacher for 20 some years. So I certainly love Waldorf education, and it's the closest one to my heart. But my younger daughter, my older daughter, when she was much younger, she went to a Montessori preschool, and I was on the board of directors, being an involved mom. I guess I was on the board of directors there, so I did learn. So I know some things about Montessori, not as much as about Waldorf, obviously. Um, and I got to spend some time in the classroom too when Rachel was in the Montessori school. So that's my background. And then the other thing that I wanted to say before I started is, so this is a different conversation if you're choosing whether to send your child to a Waldorf school or a Montessori school than if you're homeschooling, in which case you can choose whichever parts of each one that you like. But this conversation is more about the schools themselves, the classrooms. So I thought I'd start by talking about the similarities between Waldorf and Montessori. So both of them are holistic, and they both come out of this place of deep respect for the child as a whole person, as a whole human being. Both of them teach children practical life skills, and both use primarily, at least, natural materials. Um, and um, yeah, I think those are the main similarities, and really, to me, the most important one is that they both come out of this holistic image of the child and a respect for each child and their unfolding. But I would say that the way that they go about it is quite different. So, in both Montessori and Waldorf, the teachers observe the child, but and in some ways, both Waldorf and Montessori are child led, but in very different ways. So in a Montessori classroom, the child chooses what they want to do. And I suppose at the end of the day, when it's time to go home, they need to finish up what they're doing. But besides that, they basically choose what they want to do it on their own, or sometimes with a friend, and continue with whatever they're interested in until they're finished, put that away, and then go on to the next thing. Whereas in a Waldorf school, the rhythm is really important. So during free play, the the children are free to create whatever, within certain boundaries, of course, whatever they want to out of their imaginations and out of the materials at hand, etc. So there's a lot of freedom in that, but the rhythm of the day is guided by the teacher. So it's play time for everybody during the certain part of the day, and it's snack time for everybody during a certain part of the day. Whereas at a Montessori school, they do have a snack, at least the ones that I'm familiar with, but the children will have it when they're hungry. So that that's a big difference. Another big difference is in the materials in the classroom. As I mentioned, both classrooms use predominantly natural materials, But in a Montessori classroom, the materials are meant for a specific purpose. They're called works, actually. They're not called toys, they're called works. And each specific work is meant to build a certain skill and to be used a certain way. Um, and in a Waldorf classroom, the teacher offers um, open-ended toys, unformed toys, um, that can be used for many different things. And the idea is that the most important thing in a Waldorf classroom is really giving a child the space to grow into their imagination and their creativity, and also just this idea of physical movement, that the child's brain develops through their physical movement. Um, so to me, that's one of the really big differences, is that you generally, I mean, each Montessori school is different, so some may not follow the original. They evolve over time. Waldorf schools have evolved over time, and depending on the place, also, just as Montessori schools have. But traditionally in Montessori schools, you won't find like a dress-up corner or something like that, because Maria Montessori wanted the children to focus on their work, not on fantasy. So the yeah, so the both rooms are organized. Both in both types of education, the rooms are organized. Um, in the Montessori classroom, they're organized by there's different sections for different types of work. So there's the practical life section, there's the math section, there's the um, language arts section. But in a Montessori school, it's a more organic organization, I would say. Like, we tend to have the baby corner, where all the babies are, and their clothes and their cradles, and we have play stands that maybe make homes for the babies, but that can also be used to build houses or boats or whatever the children want to make. And certainly we have a separate section where the adults in the room do their work, that the children can generally join in and help in one way or another. So that's another really big difference. That brings me to another really big difference between Montessori and Waldorf. The In a Montessori classroom, the teacher will show a child how to use the different works, because they are meant to be used in a certain way, and then they will observe the children and follow them. I mean, not follow them in a creepy way, but follow them in their observation and help them as needed. But mostly, the child is left to direct themselves as much as they can. And in a Waldorf classroom, the role of the teacher is to be doing useful work. So, of course, in a Waldorf classroom, in a Waldorf early childhood classroom, there is time spent by the teacher helping to sort things out with children, disagreements, when they need help with things, of course, just as in a Montessori classroom. But the idea is that a teacher creates this atmosphere where the children can do what they need to do, which is play, by doing purposeful work. So in the classroom, we will work on making the snack, and often the children want to come and help, but we'll knead the dough, or we'll chop vegetables to make soup, or we'll fold laundry, or from the classroom, and or we may have some handwork projects that we can do, and sometimes those are ones that the children can help with, or that the children can do next to us, and sometimes the children will just play. So when I would be knitting in my classroom and watching the children, I would have little balls of yarn next to me, and sometimes some sticks, or some knitting needles next to me, and the children could just work with those materials. They weren't actually knitting; they were 3 years old, but they would go through the gestures and the imitation. So this is the idea in the Waldorf classroom, is that the children learn primarily through imitation. So we need to set an example for imitation, whereas, as I said, in the Montessori classroom, it's really the activities are more led by the child. looking at my notes here for a second. Um, in in both classrooms, there's minimal or no technology in the earlier grades, and also not no testing or homework for the little ones. So I would say that's a good thing. And the I would say that we teach practical skills are important. Practical skills are important in both Montessori and Waldorf, but we go about them in different ways. So in the practical life area, the children in a Montessori classroom, the children will have certain tasks to develop certain skills, but it's not necessarily for a particular purpose beyond developing the skills. Whereas in a Waldorf classroom, we develop skills, practical life skills, by caring for our classroom. We try to create a home-like environment, and so through the chopping and cooking and measuring and carrying and folding, we're learning not only about those practical skills, but also about math, physics, setting a table. The table, we always, in my classroom at least, we would always put out placemats, and the children would put out placemats and napkins, and figuring out how to put a placemat. That we have so many children and we need so many placemats. So depending on the ages of the children, they could do more or less. Or for the littler ones, I would give them a stack and say, put these along this side, these go on this side of the table. But for the older ones, I would give them a whole stack, and I'd say this needs to go around the table, and let them figure it out. So those are math skills, kind of geometric, working with space. And let's see, let me just look here, see if I missed anything. Oh yeah, another big difference that comes out of the different way we look at work and play is that in a Montessori classroom, although the children maybe will sit across from a friend while they're doing their work, it's not really, and it's not that they don't value social interaction, it's just not what's done so much. It's not what's emphasized so much in the classroom. So it's not so much about creating community. The children, of course, make friends, and they have outdoor playtime where they get to play with each other and they get to know each other, and of course, and they have play dates if their parents arrange it outside of the class. So there is, of course, a social structure, but it's not really part of the structure of the actual class. Whereas in a Waldorf school classroom, building community is really an important part of what we do. So the children play together, and they may choose to play, more or less with whoever they want. But then we have times when we all come together for snack time or certain activities. But it's more of a consciousness of creating this community, both within the classroom and around the classroom with the teachers and the parents. So that's really important. And there is in both Montessori and Waldorf, there is, they call it line time in Montessori, where they'll come together and do some verses or songs. And in a Waldorf school, we have circle time, which is really about it's another time when we all come together as a community and we sing. And the emphasis is really about the cycle of the year, coming together as a community, but also coming together as part of this cycle of the year and of time. The young child tends to experience time as a circle, so we come back around again to the spring, and some of the songs will be the same, and so while both have this time when we get together and recite things, the purpose behind it is somewhat different. I saw somebody, I don't remember who said it, but somebody talked about differences between gnomes versus pink towers. So the pink tower is a Montessori work that the children do, and gnomes. If you ever go to a Waldorf early childhood class, you are likely to see gnomes about or being played or told about in stories. So let's see. The other thing that I did want to mention that's similar is that in the early childhood, at least, both use have mixed age classes. So 3 to 6 or 2 to 5. It may vary a little depending on the school. How that works changes as you go into the grade school in Montessori and Waldorf, but I am not talking about the grade school today. So there's, I mean, this is they're both Waldorf and Montessori are such deep and rich educational ideologies, and this is just kind of skimmed the surface a little bit, but I know it's a big question for a lot of people, so I just wanted to share a few thoughts with you, and if you have any questions, I would try to answer them, and I'd love to hear what choices you've made or what things you particularly like about either Waldorf or Montessori. And finally, as I mentioned at the beginning, if you are homeschooling, you can choose the best of both, whatever you like of either. You can incorporate into your day. And okay, this is really the last thing. I certainly have had, as a Waldorf teacher, times when I've recommended to parents that they take their child to a Montessori school, and I know that there were Montessori teachers also that I knew in Chicago that would suggest to some of their families that they come to the Waldorf school. So some children really in the Waldorf setting don't thrive in, there's a lot going on in a Waldorf classroom. It's at its best, it's not chaotic, but it can feel that way. And if there's a child who's sensitive to noise or a lot of movement, it may just not be the best fit. And also, and again, for some children, being in a Montessori classroom where there's not enough social interaction for them may not be the best fit. So this is really, there are wonderful things about both Waldorf and Montessori. And if you're making a choice, the best thing to do, although I'm not sure you can do it right now, is to visit a classroom or maybe watch videos. A lot of schools now have videos online since we're still in COVID time and people can't go visit schools too much, at least not around here. But I hope that this has been helpful, and thank you so much for listening. If you liked it, please like and subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you again soon. So long.